All right. So today I'm sitting down with Mitch. Mitch, thank you so much for coming on here. I just want to I saw you made a post the other day, and this is what inspired me to reach out to you. And it was the post you were talking about that at one point you were homeless, and kind of that those struggles. And then I was like, what a cool story. Let me go check out your profile. And then I see that you're a CXO. And I was like, this is an amazing success story that you just don't hear very often. So, kind of without further ado, Mitch, why don't you kind of take us through, uh, I this is such a good story because you look on your education as people freak out like I don't have a college education, I don't have
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
and you didn't even finish high school, and you were homeless, and here you are as a CXO. So let's why don't you kind of tell us your background and your story?
yeah. No, that's dude, interesting. First off, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so parents split up when I was like 12, right? And um, lived with my mom, did like the weekend thing with my dad. And I didn't really understand at the time that my dad was like pretty abusive, right? Um, and I won't go into all the details. Like he wasn't physically abusive with me. Um, and then my junior year of high school, moved in with my dad, uh, and that's when like the physical abuse started.
Mm.
And so after that, moved back in with my mom, and my mom's an immigrant. She's from Europe, and I moved back in with her, and shortly thereafter, she left the country, and it found like a pseudo foster situation. Kind of was like, hey, these people are going to live in this house, our house, rent free if they take care of you, type deal. And they moved in. I kind of kept my room, and my dad, very charismatic dude, like narcissistic, um, emotionally, verbally abusive to me, and like the physical abuse like bruises heal, right? Like the emotional abuse, I'm like 10 grand into therapy bills and like still working on it. You know what I mean? um, but so this like pseudo foster family moves into my house, and my dad like instantly like gets his claws at them, right? And they're going through my room while I'm at school. They're they stole my journal, gave it to my dad, and it ended up being like not a safe place either. So my two buddies are like, look, dude, you got to get out of there. And I'm so grateful that I had these people in my life, you know. Um, I don't think I had the emotional strength to fight for myself. I was dealing with my own mental health issues. I developed, like a fairly severe depression and anxiety, which escalated into like panic disorder and agoraphobia, right?
Yeah.
And so,
And the one thing is, as I'm listening to you talk, is that and I hate to do the stereotypical thing, but as guys, we kind of grow up with a suck it up, you're not supposed to
totally,
pain, be resilient, man up kind of thing, and we can see through this that toxic point of view leads to issues that very expensive therapy bills, and not only
right.
that, but and yeah, but then you yourself, you have that baggage that sometimes you don't even realize that you have, and then you bring that into relationships.
Oh, that's such a good point, dude. It's so I've been married 16 years, and it's made a like my wife is such a saint, dude. She's going to heaven just for being married to me. I'm serious because it's like a lot of the things that benefited me from having like a really like tough upbringing um, has made it like really difficult to have like an emotionally close, intimate relationship. And I've always, and like still working on it, like made a lot of progress like in the last year, like being emotionally present in my marriage, right? It's been really tough. Like my panic attacks in high school were really bad. And like, as you can imagine, there was so much stuff going on. I definitely think there's some genetic components, but like the whole circumstance, it, made it worse in a lot of ways. And it's really like learning to trust, but also to like let go of what you can't control. And, my wife could die from cancer and that would still break my heart. And it's not that she did anything wrong or I did anything wrong. It's just, that's the type of stuff that happens in life. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't be like emotionally all in on my relationship,
Right.
I digress a little bit, but yeah. So like going through the whole mental, and like back when I was in high school, like I'm 36, like back in 2002 and 3 and 4, like nobody talked about this, right? Like nobody talked about panic disorders or depression. Like you said, it was very much like you take your emotions, you put them in a box, and then you bury that shit, and you don't talk about it with anybody, right? And my mom's British, and so she was raised very much of that like stiff upper lip, right? Like, like you just, which I think made things so much worse. And it was like talking about this type of stuff is something I had to learn later on in life,
Yeah.
But so I'm like so blessed and lucky to have like these two friends that are like, dude, you're not in a good spot. Like you weren't in a good spot with your dad. This foster situation's even worse. Like you need to leave. So we hatched a plan, right? I put everything I needed or thought I needed in a duffel bag and I threw it out the bedroom window and they like came and picked it up. And then later at like 1 a.m. I snuck out and just moved into one of their houses, lived on their couch, and like stayed with them for a month, and then like stayed in my other buddy's garage, slept under his pool table in his garage for a couple months. And then like somebody in their church kind of found out about my situation and they let me live with them for a while. And like then, somebody else, I don't know how I got connected to these other people, but they had like an extra bedroom and I ended up moving in there. And the whole time I'm like trying to take care of like I have a part-time job, right? Doing like 30 hours a week in the evenings after high school, doing everything I can to take care of myself. The whole time my mom left, like I didn't hear from her, no email, no text, no anything. And this was like the one parent who I felt like loved me, right? That I wasn't there to use as a power play or a pawn in their life. So it was a really lonely time for me. And on top of that, like I'm super dyslexic. And the whole ADD thing, and I was undiagnosed with both of them.
I have a really embarrassing story, and I say it's embarrassing because it was moments of bad parenting, like to the extreme. And so
we've all been there.
Yeah.
There's no playbook for your kids.
No. So my oldest daughter has dyslexia, right? And we were going to go and get something to eat with my grandfather. So we're like kind of this not necessarily like a family thing, but kind of a family thing.
Yeah.
And my daughter's in the back seat and she's kind of writing like a letter to like Pop and Andy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it and I notice that some of the letters are backwards, right? And I go, Danielle, rewrite this. And like, she must have been like 7 or 6.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
even,
Yeah.
And I'm like, you need to rewrite this because your letters are backwards. And like, you know better than that. She's like, there's nothing wrong with my letters. And I'm like, but they're backwards. What are you talking about? I go, you're just being lazy. And so here I am, like yelling at this, like my poor kid who is
Yeah.
dyslexic,
Yeah.
like doing the best she can. And I'm like freaking out. And then, it for some reason it didn't, hindsight is 2020, right? So it didn't occur to me, she's looking at it like it's normal, like she's not seeing anything wrong.
Yeah.
And so like, why didn't I go, maybe there's a problem here? And
Yeah.
instead I'm like, oh, you're just being it. So of course I had to go back and apologize to her because she's so here she is crying because I'm yelling. We're in this parking lot. There's people staring at us, right? And then my grandfather comes out. He's like, can you stop yelling so we can just go in and eat, And I didn't have great coping mechanisms myself, but so I like, every time somebody talks about dyslexia, I think back to that memory. It's funny, the memories that we keep with us, and I'm like,
Yeah.
man, that was a prime moment that I really could have done better.
Totally. Well, it's just like we learn and grow, right?
Yeah.
And we're all like imperfect people with our own baggage and experience that like impacts how we react to situations. And, like, I think that's the beauty of like being able to go like apologize and make amends. Like, so we did a full system transition. We changed our telephony provider a week ago, and we're in the thick. It was like the day after cutover, ported all our numbers, and it was like so stressful doing that type of thing. And I didn't have IT support in the morning. It's like 7 a.m. We're having problems, and I'm like trying to figure out where calls are coming from and where they're going. And I'm pulling these call logs, and I see one of my salespeople disposition a call incorrectly, right? He marked it as not pitchable when it was like, it was a 15-minute call. Like, and I listened to it and it was pitchable. And I was like, you son of a gun. I was like so pissed and triggered at this dude. And I was like looking for my sales director, like sort some stuff out. And this guy was right there. And I went hard. I went at him way harder than I should have. And, and I know him, I've talked to him before, but I don't like necessarily have a super close relationship with this guy. And like, as soon as that interaction was done, I was like, oh dude, I screwed that up. I felt sick, and I went and talked, like pulled him aside. And I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, no excuse at all, but I came at you way harder. I should have like made it a teaching moment. I just came down on you. And the dude was like ready to call it a day. Like, after interacting with me, he was so blown out of the water. He's like, I don't know if I can sell today. But after that, like after I was able to sit down and talk to him and apologize and be like, hey man, I screwed up. I'm so sorry. There's no excuse for it. I didn't like say, hey, I'm super, there's no excuse. It doesn't matter that I'm stressed, right? It doesn't matter that we've got a lot of stuff going on. But me and him are tight now, right? Like, we have a rapport because of that. So we're imperfect. It's okay to make mistakes as long as we take that as a chance to like learn and grow,
Yeah.
But yeah, super dyslexic, undiagnosed. I fail English my senior year, right? And so I can't graduate. And candidly, with everything that was going on in my life and how disruptive everything was, like, I don't think that helped. Right? I was worried about like making enough money to buy food for myself and put gas in my stupid minivan that I was driving around. I was like half living out of, and between like places I could crash. I didn't spend too many nights. Like, I did spend one night in a ditch, or like spend a couple nights sleeping out of the back of the van, right? But like mostly like just tremendously generous people like just came out of the woodworks for me. And I'm so incredibly lucky, right? Like, there's so many different ways like my life could have gone.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, it's funny because that's what I teach. I teach writing and grammar, right?
Okay.
And so, but I was thinking back, like I never finished high school myself. I went and got my GED. I got so far behind that I just said, well, this is dumb. And so I was working these odd jobs, and I decided, I was like, I'm gonna go get a job as a roofer. I don't know why, because I am not like, you know, I can cut, I can hammer, I can screw some stuff in, I can like kind of hang some drywall and whatnot, but I'm not that kind of worker, So I fall off this roof, and we were working 6 days a week, 12 to 15-hour days, and I was making it. I wouldn't even like, I was the grunt. I was like the helper, so I helped with tear off and like cleanup. And so like I was making like this, 425 an hour doing like this horrible work in the middle of summer. And hats off to those guys because they working rear ends off.
Concrete and roofing is like brutal.
Yeah. So I decide, I'm like, okay, this is not, I need to go back to high school. And so I hadn't been to high school in years, right? And so I ended up getting a job at 7-Eleven after that. And I was working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. And I was trying to support at this point, I'm like 18, almost 19. And I had I'd gotten this girl pregnant, and I was like, okay, well, we'll get married and I'm going to do the right thing. And, and so we're living in this house with like no heat, no air. Like it's just that, rent's like $600 a month. Yeah. So I go and I'm like, well, I'm going to go back to high school. I'm going to get my high school diploma, and then I'm going to find something in college to do. And, so I would leave 7-Eleven, and then I would go to the high school, and I wouldn't have time to do homework or anything like that, and I hadn't had a chance to eat. I'm starving. So I'm trying to get something out of the vending machine. And then one of the teachers comes out, and it's like not working. And I'm like kind of like banging on it a little bit. And she's like, you need to go back to class. And I'm like, I'm hungry. I just got done working 8 hours. And she's like, I don't care. You don't get to, you go back to class. And she like rips the power cord out. And like, I just had this moment where I was like, this is dumb. This is dumb. So as as an educator now, I realize that there are like those teachers out there, they can have a really direct impact on, whether you want to learn or whether you don't want to learn. And even if you don't want to learn, they can at least have that power to make you want to quit or at least stay in school enough. And so at that, I dropped out and I just went and got my GED, because I was just like, this is not working. Yeah. And that's kind of how I, ended up, majoring in education and then teaching. So I completely resonate with for me, it was math. I was so far behind on math. I was like, I give up on high school. This is dumb. So no, I totally get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think, teachers are in such an awesome position to influence somebody's life, and like not graduating and failing that English class, like ended up being one of the best things ever. Because I enrolled at Utah Valley State College because it was open enrollment and I didn't need a diploma to go there. And I was like, well, I can maybe get like a GED equivalent if I took English like that first semester, right? And they'd like retroact credits for me. So I enrolled in this English class, which like there's no way in hell I would have done that if I didn't have to, right? And my buddy enrolls with me. And so we're sitting in the back. This is the buddy that I slept in his garage for like a couple months with the pool table. And I'm still like really close with both these guys. Like I was at his parents' house last week for one of his kids' birthday parties, and close with both the parents and that, and so we're like having a grand old time in the back, cracking jokes, being super loud. And like 3 weeks into the semester, his dad gets him enrolled at Brigham Young University, which is like a big, nice school in Utah, right? Because he like taught there part-time. So he's like, well, he like didn't have the grades to get in, but his dad got him in because he taught a couple language classes. So he transfers to BYU, and I'm like in the library. This is October 25th of 2004. And I'm getting up to leave, and I like see this girl sitting a couple tables over, smoking hot. And I think to myself, I've got to meet her. And I go down and sit across from her. And she recognizes me from English, but I don't recognize her from English. So I talked to her, like, hey, give her my number. I was like, hey, I'd love to hang out or whatever. And the only reason she gave me the time of day is because we had that English class together. Anyway, she calls me, and I end up marrying her, right? That's how and there's no way I would have, like, the only reason she talked to me is because we had English together. And the only reason I took that class is because I failed English my senior year of high school, right? So,
well, I feel like we have a lot of commonalities, because I was laughing because I like my wife that I'm married to was our first date was because of a class. I was taking a zoology class, and I had to do this bug collection and like order it by phylum and class and stuff. I don't really like touching bugs. Now, my wife didn't care. Like, she's cool with touching bugs. So I had to call her and go, hey, you want to go on a date and go bug hunting down in the, and she was like,
whatever girl wants to hear. Let's
go
bug hunting together.
How romantic, right?
Yeah. Dude, that's funny. It's funny, though, because my wife, Amber, was studying physiology, which was actually a subject I did really well in. And found science was always interesting to me. Physiology, like, I did well in because it was so visual, and like I have a damn good memory. So like I memorized like all the bones and muscles and all the stuff super easy. And it was like English I sucked at, right? Not to mention like all the crazy, like, anyway. But she was studying physiology because she needed a science credit. And I was like, oh, I'll help you study with that. I'm great at it. Never in a million years did I think she'd call me. But she legit needed help studying, right? What's funny about that is she had meant to sign up for zoology because she's like, oh, I love animals. Signed up for the wrong class, ended up in physiology, and was like so overwhelmed with it. And so she called and she's like, hey, I've got this test on the circulatory system. Can you help me study for it? I'm like, oh, sick. Come over. Walk in her apartment, and her roommate stops dead in her tracks and goes white, almost like she's seen a ghost, right? And she's like, Mitchell Watkins? I'm like, how do you know me? And I haven't gone by Mitchell since I was like 6. Anyway, it turns out that she was my mom's best friend's daughter, and we were like childhood friends. And then she moved away to Missouri and had never seen her. And so that like lended to that I was probably not a serial killer. Anytime you can get like roommate or friend buy-in, that really helps, right?
Yes.
Anyway, so my wife and I ended up hanging out a ton. She didn't have a car. It snows a lot in Utah in the wintertime. So if it was ever bad weather, like I'd offer to give her a ride home and that type of thing. And started dating. And the rest is history.
I love it. So I think this is so where going now, did you ended up graduating college?
No.
Okay.
No. So I ended up getting Amber pregnant, and we got married at 19. We found out on, I don't remember what day. I remember the phone call. And it's so interesting because I was like, I'm in love with this girl. This is who I want to marry. We had sex 2 times. And, we're both like from religious households, believed in like waiting till marriage. So we're like, hey, maybe we should like take a break and figure some things out, right? So she moved home. And like we were still talking every day. she lived like an hour away, right? Anyway, so I was working 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. driving a forklift in this factory down in South Provo. And she called me and she's like, hey, are you sitting down? I was like, no, but I can be,
Right.
Tells me that she's expecting, and she's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to marry you, like I was planning on proposing in March anyway.
Yeah.
And it's December, so let's just get married. We got married 7 days later on the 29th of December. It was wild. We were both 19 years old. And my oldest daughter was born in August of 05 or 06. We got married in 05. 20 years, 6 months old, became a father. At that point, never, and I was like working at night, trying to go to school, just wasn't clicking, didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, like broke as a joke. Now I have a family to provide for, and I'm just like, college is great if you know what you're going to do, but if you don't know what you're going to do and you're paying for it yourself, like don't do that until you have a plan, right? Like, so I think I completed like 3 semesters of college. Got married. Amber was working. I was working. Got a job plumbing. And I was like, cool, I'll be a plumber, go to trade school, start my own business. And that was kind of the plan. And once Emma came along, we decided that we wanted Amber to be able to stay home with the kids, right? Wanted more kids. She was making like $10 an hour, and I think it cost her like $8 an hour for childcare. So it was like, you know what I mean? It's just like the economics didn't pencil.
Yeah.
So, like we moved into her parents' basement so we could afford, life. I mean, kind of, dude.
Yeah.
It was wild. Like looking back, I'm like, what the hell? How did this work? Got a job. So that, we got married end of 05, started plumbing in 06, moved into her parents' basement in 07, and then bought a house in 08.
That's fast.
At the top of the market, dude. And then like the housing crisis hit. And like, I'd plumbed for 2 years. Now people are getting laid off. Nobody's building houses. I was doing all new construction plumbing. And saw kind of the writing on the wall. I was like, I was a good worker, but there were journeymen that had worked, 20 years experience. I'm like, 2 years versus 20 years. I'm probably not the guy they're hanging on to. Right. Licensed. So I did like the natural transition and went and sold alarms door to door.
Well, I mean, that's my first sales job, and it kind of ruined it for me for sales for a long time. Was and it was kind of like I just I knew that there were some people that made like a lot of money in sales, and so I answered this sales ad that was and so, but they were really very kind of sketchy on what it was, and they said, well, we we bring people together, and I was like, oh, that sounds lovely.
Yeah.
Let me
Great idea.
Do that. Yeah. So I show up. Yeah. And so I show up, and I go through the interview, and they're like, so here's what you're going to be doing, and they pull out a phone book, the white pages, right? And they go, you're going to start at A, and you're going to call every one of these numbers, and you're going to find out if they're single or not. And then if they are, then you're going to convince them how lonely they are and that they need to use our matchmaking services. And I was like, that sounds terrible, but okay. And like I made like 3 phone calls, and like the third phone call was this woman whose husband had just died. And I was like, well, are you okay? I can't do this. Like, I was like, I can't. And like the manager, he was like, well, did you ask her if she was lonely? I was like, I tried, but like I just couldn't. And he goes, well, you need to try. I was like, I just I don't think this is for me. I just can't. I just can't do this.
That's like full boiler room right there.
All right. So from plumbing to selling alarms door to door, and how did that go for you?
Not great, dude. Like, I honestly, like, I had the communication skill set to do well, and I worked super, super hard. But I had like a really negative self-dialogue. Still battling depression. Still, my anxiety had subsided a fair amount. But it was like pure commission. And like the stress, like we had 2 kids at that point, house payment. And like I did fine if I was like single.
Right.
But not good for like providing for a family, you know? Dude, I think my my taxes that year, I filed like $14,000 earned. I made like $1,100 a month.
Gosh.
And so like I did okay. I didn't do great. But I learned a ton, dude. And I learned a lot about sales, what not to do. I really struggled with negative self-talk. And that really made it hard, right? Because like to do well in that type of cold calling, door-to-door sales, like you've got to be like the world's biggest cheerleader to yourself.
Yeah.
And love yourself so damn much that like nothing gets you down, you know? So I didn't do well enough for me to like not work. A lot of the guys that do well in door-to-door sales, like just work for the summer and then chill, right? So I got a job at that company, just like customer service phone center. And I was like, dude, I needed anything. And I was making $10 an hour on the phones, applying for every promotion I could possibly get my hands on, and like moved up pretty quick. Like got onto like a manager escalation team, became a supervisor. And I was like this team lead supervisor in customer service for this company. And we had like a big surplus of panels. And so we did a sales competition to kind of clear out some of the inventory, right? That had overpurchased. And so like my team, there was like 10 teams in customer service, and my team did 50% of the sales volume.
Okay.
So the VP that was over customer service was like, shit, this guy knows how to lead. And he pulled me out of that team and put me as a team lead or a supervisor in inside sales. Or no. I did like a customer marketing team where we just upgraded customers' equipment. And at that point, dude, I felt like I was doing so good. I was making like $20 an hour. I was stoked. And worked there for a couple years, did really well. And then that same VP is like, hey, I have a leadership vacancy on the inside sales team. And he brought me over. And that's when I was like, I've made it. I got put on like $70,000 a year salary. And I was like, I'm the richest dude that's ever lived. I bought a new fishing pole, like brand new, not like off like Craigslist.
Like a real one.
Yeah. I was like, I'm never going to worry about money ever again.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And worked in inside sales for like 8 years after that. Moved up to became manager, senior manager. And the company went through an acquisition. So they were bought out by Blackstone, which is a private equity bank out of New York, which was great for the company, great for the founder. Not great for me in the sense that it became a big company at that point. It was bought out for $2.2 billion.
Damn.
And it, a lot of guys from Harvard came in to fill in the C-suite, and they brought a lot of people with them and kind of filled up that director to VP level. with outside hires. So there wasn't a lot of like upward motility available at the company at the time. So I went to a competitor. I went to North Star, started an inside sales team from the ground up there, and got a director role. Very excited. Met this guy named Bridger. He was a lead vendor for me. He had a friend that owned a home warranty company, and so we were taking his home warranty leads and selling them security systems. And that role kind of ran its course after a couple of years. And Bridger also owned this pest control company. And so I remember talking to him like, hey, they had, North Star wasn't in a great financial place. And I told him going in, I was like, look, you need 24 to 36 months to operate in the red with inside sales before you can hit economy of scale to be profitable. And they made some big bets on other things that didn't pan out. And they just didn't have the runway to give us enough time to get into the black. So they cut the inside sales team. So I called, Bridger, I was like, hey, not doing a thing with North Star anymore. And he's like, I'm getting on a cruise right now. Do not take a job until I'm back in town. So I came on with Greenix as a consultant for like a month, to like kind of mutually interview, see if it's a project I was interested in, see if I'd be a good fit. Did consult with them for like a month, did a presentation to their board. They offered me a VP role, which is kind of funny because there was like 10 call center agents. But they're like, look, come in, put your arms around the call center operations, and like a year in, let's build out an inside sales team, right? That was back in 2018. I wanted to say 08, but that's certainly not the case. 2018. And so I came in, and dude, it was like this little hallway with like some cubicles, and there wasn't enough seats. So there was like the printer and a cabinet next to the printer, and I like ripped the doors off the cabinet and had my little laptop and worked at this, like on this counter where I could like slide my knees in where the cabinet doors were. And until we outgrew that space and moved, but we started an inside sales team, and that's just blown up. Got promoted to be the chief experience officer after 2 years, 2.5. So I'm like 18 months in to being the CXO. When I started, Greenix was like 14 million of ARR, and now we're at 100 million of ARR, and that's in 4 years. So the growth has just been astronomical. Our inside sales team, the very first year, did 3 million of sales. We're on pace to do 17 million in sales this year. I started with like 10 agents. And not that like head count's like the best indicator of growth. Like in a lot of ways, you don't want it like your head count to scale with the customer size. But I'll peak at like 209 employees this year. So it's been a ride. It's been cool.
Man, that sounds better than going door to door selling security. So, just out of curiosity, what does for your role? What might your average week look like?
Yeah, so the most important thing I do is not sexy at all, but I listen to phone calls, right? It's the blocking and tackling and helping my leaders stay focused on the important things. So I listen to calls every day for at least an hour. I'm over like 8 different team departments. So, I rotate through those. Of course, inside sales and our customer loyalty team are super important. So I've listened to them those two for probably about 50% of my time, and then the other teams for the rest. Meeting with every one of my department heads every week, going through our KPIs. How are one-on-ones going? How's call coaching going? Are you listening to calls? Are you taking calls? I want all my leaders taking calls every week. We've got, obviously executive meetings I attend, and then individual projects that I'm over that I need to make sure we're keeping the ball moving forward. And then strategic decision making with our CSO and COO and other leaders on like, hey, strategically, where are we taking the customer experience? And that's most of my week. I do my best to try and minimize. Unfortunately, I have a fair amount of meetings that are like fixed and recurring. But you do your best to make sure you have time for those projects, listening to calls, call coaching, meeting with your leaders, training. That works still. Those are like developing leaders and helping them run their teams well. It's the most important thing I do, right? So
what is, now that you've made it, like you've made it, man. I mean, obviously you've got a lot of years left to do different things, but at this point, once you hit the C-suite or maybe the E-suite, I mean, that's like, besides being a straight CEO, that's about as high as you can get.
Yeah.
What's next for you? What other goals do you have, maybe even outside of career that you haven't quite accomplished yet, but like your eyes are on that prize?
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote that I love that I can't even remember who said it, but it's no success outside the home will compensate for failure in it, right? And my daughter is 15. I have 3 girls and a boy. So Emma's 15, Kenzie is 14, Addie is not 9. She's 9. She'll be 10 in July. And Levi's 8. That's the most important thing, right? Like, I didn't have a great father, so I'm trying to be a great father to my kids, and help set them up for whatever they want out of life. Love to retire early, right? Like Amber and I got married super young and got to watch all our friends like party throughout their 20s and have a great time. So I'd love to retire by 50. And, I was 27 when we had Levi. Amber was 27. And so by the time we're 47, he'll be 20, right? Hopefully he's out of the house by then. So we'll be empty nesters for sure by 50. Yeah. And dude, all I want is to hang out with Amber and travel and see cool places and be a badass grandpa, like
that's
not,
funny.
And I'm like, at the end of the day, like that's where I can have the biggest impact in this world is with my family. Beyond that, I want to be a force for good. I want everybody I work with to be happier, healthier, more productive people for having worked with me. And I want to put goodness into this world, right? Like, and I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know if that's like, I enjoy speaking, right? Like maybe I get into some public speaking or write a book or something, but I want to make a positive impact. Like that's super important to me. But I like working. I like being part of a team and helping, helping leaders grow and develop. It's my favorite thing in the world. So I certainly foresee myself still doing that. But yeah, I think my kids are my number one priority. My wife first, and then my kids.
Yeah.
And then my career.
Yeah.
I mean, your career is a necessity, and I get a lot of value out of it. I enjoy what I do. I love who I work with. I love working with young leaders and helping them develop and grow. Like my retention manager left like 4 months ago to this other role that like doubled his income. And I was so stoked on that. it hurts to lose somebody key like that for sure.
Right.
But like, I'm so stoked for him and his wife and like what that means for their family.
Yeah. No,
And
I get it. You know, because that's, you know, I've spent the last 16 years teaching, and you know, salary has always been, you know, I've worked multiple jobs just to keep, you know, my wife has always been a much higher earner than I have been. But you know, now it's like now that I'm getting out and I'm seeing, you know, it's like it was weird because the offers even for stepping in the first time into tech is still like 25,000 more just stepping into what, and I'm like, and then they start talking about things like, yeah, depending on how well the company does, there are bonuses, and then you get like a cost of living raise, and I'm like, a cost of a what?
what's a cola?
I don't.
Don't you just drink colas?
Yeah. So it's this. So right now, like myself, I'm looking at, you know, I have, you know, with these offers, it's like, okay, I want to, it's almost like and I hate to say this, but making up for lost time.
Yeah.
And so, okay, how can I position myself? And, you know, it's like, my neighbor always asks, he goes, well, do you regret that you died? Absolutely not. You know, would I have loved to make more money? Yeah,
Sure.
because I want to buy a boat, you know, I want a boat and I want some toys to play with and stuff. But,
Yeah.
and I've had, you know, very, very fulfilling career, but now it's, you know, now that my kids are almost out of the house and we're about to be empty nesters, like, and that's like, I had, you know, I had my first kid at 17, well, 18. She got pregnant when I was 17 and 18. Now, you know, and so same thing, watching all my friends that were like going out and doing things and they're partying and like having all this fun. But now I look at it, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be 50 and I'm going to have real money and I can actually really go out, you know, because they were going out to like bars and nightclubs and stuff. But I'm like, I can go on cruises,
That's right.
like real vacations.
That's right. Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah.
So,
well, Mitch, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. I really appreciate the vulnerability that you showed. Not, you know, you know, a lot of people are kind of guarded how they might appear to others. You know, I'm not sure if you've connected with Dale Dupree, but he's another one that oh man, he's got a great story about selling copiers and stuff. He's a copier warrior. But yeah, so Dale Dupree is somebody you should connect with. I did a live with him, and he, you know, he was very forthright about like he was suffering with depression, and you know, and there was one point where he was thinking of suicide, and so you know, it's refreshing to see men that are willing to go, listen, I had some emotional issues I was struggling with, because, you know, the majority of the times when I run into guys, they're like, no, I'm fine, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is great. So man, we're gonna stay in touch.
Let's do it,
because I want to pick your brain to become like a better leader myself. And
anytime, dude.
Yeah, we'll have to meet one day and have a beer.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, man. Hey, thanks for hanging out.
Absolutely. Appreciate you being here, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, take care.